to the KJ Methods YouTube channel. Happy New Year to everyone. This is our first recording of 2024. First, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let all of your friends know about the KJ Method. What I wanted to do briefly today is to just talk about what I think are the most important topics for the real estate exam. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, real versus personal property. This is where it all starts at the very beginning. You need to know what the difference is between real and personal property. You know that the difference is mobility versus immobility, but we have all of these other terms talking about appurtenances, improvements, tenements. And so what we're looking for is real versus personal. And the biggest idea there is that if it is real property, the seller must leave the property there. If it is personal property, then the seller can take it with them on sale. The next topic is encumbrances. You need to know the difference between what are the public encumbrances and the private encumbrances. Public encumbrances, we use that acronym PEAT, police power, eminent domain, taxation, and a sheet, everything that goes along with each of those. And then we talk about the private encumbrances. We have liens, we have easements, we have encroachments, we have covenants, we have conditions. And so what you want to do is make sure that you understand the definitions of each of these and how they affect property. The next one, types of ownership. You want to know the difference between a joint tenancy and a tenancy in common. Tenants by the entirety, those are the big ones. They do also test other concurrent forms of ownership like partnerships, limited partnerships, but generally tenants in common, tenants by the entirety, and joint tenancy. You want to know the differences between those. Freeholds. What is a freehold estate? Freehold means uncertain duration. Uncertain duration. We don't know how long it's going to last. And in pre-license, we generally teach 4 different freeholds. Absolute, which is the big one, right? It's the one where there's no conditions. You can do whatever you want with it. It's probably the way most of us own homes. Determinable, condition subsequent, and then also life estate. So what is the difference between a determinable and a condition subsequent and a life estate? Very often students get life estates confused. It's almost like full ownership of the property, right? So you have like the bundle of rights, except that you can't sell that property. And on death, right, it's terminated. Next topic, 3 methods of appraising. We have the replacement cost approach, we have the comparative market analysis, and we have the income approach. You should know when to use each of these, of course, what they are, but when to use each of them. Market data, you're generally going to see in residential appraising. Cost approach is going to be the more difficult one, right? When we talk about new construction, or if we talk about unique type of properties or insurance type of properties. It's going to be under the cost approach. And the income approach, you're going to pick that one anytime you see that there is going to be some income involved, right? We use either cap rates here or gross rent multiplier, gross income multiplier. All right, the next one is all the types of loans. Woo, the one thing about pre-license, there are so many loan types, yet they only test about 10 questions in finance, but you need to know a ton. So all of the type of loans, but definitely know what the difference is between an amortized loan, a fully amortized or partially amortized loan. A lot of the other loans are kind of not so much residential, they're kind of unique loans, but make sure that you know FHA, VA, right? The ones that are the amortized loans. And then also the financial disclosures. You need to know the financial disclosures. This is talking about when you make the disclosures, when the bank makes the disclosure to the person, and we're talking about TILA and RESPA here, the loan estimate and also the closing disclosure. When are all of these due to be disclosed to a particular borrower, and what are the distinctions between them? What do you have to disclose exactly? Contracts. What is the difference between a valid contract, a void contract, a voidable contract, statute of frauds? Valid and void is generally pretty easy. It's voidable that kind of have, a lot of elements to it. But understand valid means that all the elements are present. Void means it's not. Voidable means it's able to be voided. It's able to be voided. And so we have certain rules and in certain situations where you can get out of the contract. Also, statute of frauds. A lot of times people get confused with the statute of frauds. It has nothing to do with validity. The statute of frauds goes to enforceability of contracts. Types of residential leases: tenancy for years, periodic tenancy, tenancy at sufferance, and tenancy at will. What are the differences between these leases in terms of notice requirements? What happens on death of a landlord? What happens on death of a tenant? What happens when the property gets sold? In what situations could the new buyer change the lease terms, or can they change the lease terms? It would be the question. Types of agents and an agency. So we have special agents, general agents, universal agents. What are the difference between each of those? What are the agent's duties to their principal? We use Poland for that. Some other coursework uses a different acronym, but it's all pretty much the same, right? Performance, obedience, loyalty, accountability, notice, and due care. Also, how do you create an agency relationship? Don't forget, the presence or absence of compensation has nothing to do with whether or not you have created an agency. You have to either have actual agency, implied agency, or ostensible agency in order to create that agency. And then once you create it, are you a special agent, a general agent, or a universal agent? And then what are your duties to each other? What is the agent's duties to the principal? What's the principal's duties to the agent? Disclosures. When do you have to make disclosures? Generally when something is material or there is a latent defect, the ones that are hidden you can't see. Then we have this mold, asbestos, death, suicide, fair housing. A lot of these are state specific in terms of whether you have to disclose or not. Fair housing, you need to know what the categories are of fair housing. That is a federal law, and so you have to know what the categories are and when you can disclose certain things and when you can't. What are all of the exceptions to fair housing? You should know that too. When does death and suicide come into play, right? We have these properties that we're calling stigmatized properties, so when can you disclose and not? Title. What are the types of deeds that we have? There are several types of deeds: a general warranty, limited warranty, bargain and sale, quit claim deed, right? We have a number of different deeds. What warranties do each of these deeds have? Which warranties do they have? And how do you create a valid deed? What are the elements to creating a valid deed? Fair housing, we talked about needing to know what the topics are, but then we have this redlining, blockbusting, steering, and another biggie, Sherman Antitrust Act. What are the rules relating to the Sherman Antitrust Act? When do you violate Sherman and when do you not violate Sherman? Calculations. You should know loan to value, points, cap rate, principal, and interest. All right. There are a number of different calculations that we can do in real estate, and you don't need to know them all, but I definitely want you to focus on loan to value. Also focus on how to figure out a loan, how to calculate a loan amount, how to calculate interest. That goes to principal and interest, but you can do interest separately. How do you calculate that? Capitalization rate, very important. And points, they seem to be testing a lot on points lately. So make sure that you are understanding what a point is and how you calculate it. Well, that's it. I told you that it would be really short today. I think that those are probably the most important topics if we have to hone in. You know that there's a ton of information on the real estate exam, but I think that this is a good basis for how you would get started on getting prepared for the real estate exam. Of course, vocabulary. We're going to talk more about that in another video. So thank you for coming by the KJ Method, and please don't forget to subscribe so that you know every time I upload a video, and tell your friends about the KJ Method. Have a great day.